Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another hour of Healthy Conclusions, where we try to give our listeners important information on nutrition, exercise, and holistic alternative and integrative medicine. My name is Bob Nukabar, and I will be your host for this evening's show. Tonight's show is being brought to you by Altrua HealthShare, which has been serving its members and its families since 1997 with their HealthShare needs. Take a moment to visit their website at altruahealthshare.org and compare their HealthShare plan with your current one. It could mean substantial savings to you and your family's HealthShare costs. Our guest for today is Dr. Michael Karfelt. He's the head of the Karfelt Center here in Meridian. Dr. Michael Karfelt is a board-certified traditional naturopath with 30 years of clinical experience with past offices in Los Angeles and Stockholm. He has been practicing in Boise, Idaho since 1999. He is also past elected board member of the Idaho Association of Naturopathic Physicians. Dr. Karfelt is a seasoned lecturer at universities, public and private venues in both the United States and Sweden. He has published articles in newsletters and magazines covering diverse health topics. Michael grew up in the outskirts of Stockholm, where he enjoyed hiking, walking, and camping, kind of like we do here in Idaho, and which might have been the reason that he moved here. Of course, he was under the Nordic skies at that time, and some really beautiful mountains, as we have here also. He loves playing tennis and volleyball, and he earned, believe it or not, his black belt in Taekwondo in 2000, so don't mess with this doctor. So, Dr. Karfelt, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, aside from what I just read through?
Yes, it's such an honor to be on your show here today. I started actually my schooling in engineering, and a gentleman is one of the leading Swedish naturopaths that I met when I was 12 years old in Switzerland. He brought me into his family and started to show me the alternative way or the holistic way of look upon disease and how you can use very simple means in order to be able to correct the body and support it towards health. And that is when my eyes opened to the possibility of the naturopathic realm. So I started then in engineering and did that for a couple of years. And then when I was about 19 years old, he came to me and said, well, you should look into my profession. And I was very intrigued. I spent some time in his practice, and I fell in love with the impact that he had on his patients, seeing them coming in with all these different health conditions, being on various medications, and then leaving with no medications and feeling full with energy, getting rid of their just different ailments like psoriasis, arthritis, digestive complaints, fatigue, and so forth. So that is what brought me into the naturopathic medicine realm. And so I've been doing this for since 1987. So it's been a while, and I've seen some amazing results in patients that were considered medical failures, and then using powerful naturopathic medicine then to bring them back into health again and restore normal physiological function.
Can you explain to our audience a little bit about what naturopathic medicine is and how you use it?
Absolutely. And naturopathic medicine is based upon a few simple principles. One is that you believe in the ability in nature to heal. So you look upon principles that are out there, how animals, what kind of plants are they drawn to for different ailments, and what kind of constituents plants have that can have then a chemical impact on our physical body, and also look upon traditional folklore as to what plants that they've used in the past that have helped them with various health conditions. So you're looking upon that there's simple, basic principles in nature that exist, And by applying those principles and utilizing things that evolved with us over time, over thousands and thousands of years, to use those and then to bring health to us. So that's one of the basic principles. Another very important principle that is quite separate from the medical traditional view of seeing things is that in naturopathy, you look upon the body as a whole. You can't really separate one part of the body and just work on that without impacting another. So look upon that, for instance, a patient may be coming in, they're dealing with a skin condition. Medically, you would then treat the skin. You would then, put some kind of steroid cream or antifungal cream or, something that would then just treat the skin in itself. In naturopathic philosophy, you look upon the skin then as a symptom of what's going on inside the body. So it's more the body's way of expressing itself, saying that there's something wrong, and this is how I'm communicating to you that something is wrong. So as a naturopath, you will then start to look at, what is the underlying causative factor. You don't want to just treat the symptom. You want to look at what is behind the symptom. So is it then the liver that's dysfunctioning? Maybe the liver's toxic. This individual might have been working as a hair professional, or hairdresser, or working in an environment where they're exposed to a lot of chemicals. Or it could be that their ability to eliminate toxins through normal avenues, such as the colon, kidneys, lungs, that they are overburdened. So then the body's trying to push toxins out through the skin. So that's a second principle, is to look upon the body as a whole instead of just isolating the symptom and treating the symptom.
So you're trying to find the root cause of disease rather than treating the symptoms as they do many times in the allopathic part of the industry.
Exactly. Yeah, I kind of liken it as if you're driving down the road and all of a sudden you have, one of the warning lights on the dashboard is starting to flash. Something is wrong in the car. So you can take care of that in a couple of ways. This flashing light is quite annoying. So you can just take a piece of tape and just tape over that light, and you won't have to see it anymore. And it's like the car is fixed. So that's what I would call symptom management. You just suppress the symptom and you ignore what is the underlying factor. In the naturopathic world, what you would do then is that you would look under the hood to see, why is this light flashing? We would do a diagnostic to see what is the underlying cause, and let's correct that instead. So it may be a little bit of a longer process. Here in the Western world, we're so used to these quick fixes. We just want to take a pill and then have the symptom gone. And that's exactly like we just want to put a piece of tape over that light on the dashboard, and we just want it gone. But that will only lead to worse problems in the future. So if you don't address the underlying factor, it's going to then lead to worse issues later on. And that is then the beginning of what I would call chronic, all these chronic illnesses that we're dealing with, is because we're suppressing acute conditions like flus, like skin rashes, like a little pain, and then we suppress that with medication. And because of that, then we then develop more chronic conditions. Just like in the car, if you don't deal with that red light and fix that, what's under the hood, when we're driving out on the freeway, we may then end up with a serious situation.
So would I be right in saying that with something like diabetes, rather than giving somebody insulin, which may be the thing that will help them immediately, you're trying to get them to lose weight, to eat properly, change their diet? I mean, is that correct?
Absolutely. And in regards to insulin, just taking insulin, what they found is that, yes, we are bringing down the blood sugar, but the chronic conditions that are associated with diabetes, like the impact on the eye, the chance of going blind, the neuropathy, the kidney damage, all of those conditions aren't really reduced by taking the insulin. So it is a much better path than to try to look at the underlying factor and see why is the blood sugar elevated, what is causing it. So we're looking at diets, we're wanting to lose weight. And then also, then maybe there are nutritional deficiencies, like common ones when you're dealing with blood sugar regulation is things like zinc, manganese, magnesium, vanadyl sulfate, vanadium. Those are common nutritional deficiencies, and the body can't function properly if it doesn't have these nutrients to be able to regulate the blood sugar and produce its own insulin, so to say.
Okay, so again, you're treating the whole body. You're not treating just a particular disease or a symptom of that disease.
Exactly. And what we see disease as, it's a way of the body to communicate that there's something wrong. So we just want to listen to the body, and it only has certain ways to communicate that something is wrong. Some of the pathways of communication is pain. So, the body will, show you, you have pain in the knee, and then the body says there's something that's going wrong in the body, and I'm sending a pain signal.
Well, I'm getting a pain signal now, and I have to take a quick break. But we'll be back in a few minutes. We're listening to Health Conclusions with Bob Neugebauer on KIDO 580. Welcome back to Health Conclusions on 580 KIDO. We're speaking with Dr. Michael Karfelt at the Karfelt Center, sponsored by AltruaHealthcare.org. So, Doctor, would you continue on with your conversation?
Yes, I was mentioning that there's just a few different ways that the body can communicate that something is wrong. And, I mentioned pain being one, but you also have things like fatigue or depression. These are or skin rashes, as I mentioned earlier, or digestive upsets. There's only so many signals that it can send, but then with those signals, it is just the body's way of letting you know that, please come and check me out, go through and analyze the system and give me a all over. And that's what naturopathic medicine does.
Now, let me ask you a quick question here. If somebody were to go to an allopathic doctor and come up with the same symptoms, would they necessarily come up with the same discussion you're having now about what type of a disease these people have, or would they come up with something possibly totally different?
What the allopathic medicine does very well is putting symptoms in boxes and then naming that as the disease. So, going back to the skin rash, they'll say, well, you got eczema, you got psoriasis. And or if you're dealing with pain all over and, you have symptoms of the diagnosis with fibromyalgia. So they create these different boxes, and you identify them with this box, and then there's a medication that they give you, because you're in that box. So they have, the system is this disease, this cure, and they follow these principles. In naturopathic world, as I mentioned, if you are dealing them with a pain in the knee, yes, a medical diagnosis could then be arthritis. In the naturopathic world, you would then look at why do you have arthritis? Well, are you eating improperly? Are you too acidic? Are you not absorbing the nutrients the way that you should? Are you heavy metal toxic and you have then mercury that's come into the knee and creating inflammation in that area and creating an immune response in that area? So it may be the same diagnosis in a way, but the naturopath will go further into looking what is behind that box. They're not satisfied with just saying you have arthritis and let's just manage that pain. with some muscle relaxant or anti-inflammatory or whatever may be thrown at them.
Would you say that the naturopathic way is a less invasive way of treating patients rather than the allopathic?
I would definitely say that. And the reason is that anytime you do symptom management, it comes with a cost. It's just like when you go out buying anything on a credit card, it's not money that you really have. You'll have to pay back in interest. So that's always going to have a negative impact. And also, there is no pharmaceutical drug that does not have a negative impact. They call it side effect, but it's not really a side effect. It's just an effect. It's just what the pharmaceutical drug does. So it is going to put stress on the liver. It is going to put stress on the kidneys. It is going to put stress on your digestive. So you will then be in a worse situation after taking the pharmaceutical drug than you would before. So that in itself will make it less invasive. And also one of the tools in the allopathic world is of course surgery. And sometimes surgery is necessary, and also sometimes pharmaceutical drugs are necessary. So I'm not going to say that they never have a place, but I just feel that sometimes we jump to that conclusion prematurely. So what is important then is to take a step back, and then in the naturopathic philosophy, then work on supporting the body's normal physiological function and find out what needs to be corrected so that it can function on its own and so that it is stronger after the treatment than it was before.
Well, one more question here. Would you find it more applicable for naturopaths and allopathic doctors to be working together in an integrated process to find the less invasive way of helping people, but also being able to have that allopathic diagnosis so you can compare them?
I think that would be the best possible scenario, is that to have then the naturopathic and the allopathic work together, and then each side have their strength, and then utilize that modality when it is needed, and then work together to find out what is the best possible treatment plan for this patient that will have the least negative impact and the best possible outcome.
Do you find it acceptable by a lot of the allopathic doctors to work with naturopaths in the current times?
I've seen a shift during the 30 years that I've been doing this, and it used to be quite a stigma in regards to natural medicine. But the public has become more and more educated as to what it can do, and also it has proven itself so many times in so many different ways, and that's why the natural medicine is growing so much. Because of that, I feel that the medical profession is having to give it its credence, and is getting more and more okay with working with naturopathic doctors and other holistic doctors alongside with what their treatment plans are.
What I found interesting was the ACA Act, or as I call it, Obamacare, actually had provisions in there for non-invasive naturopathic medicine.
Yeah, exactly. So it is because of public pressure and public education, and also seeing the impact that it has on people. I mean, people do better if they eat well. They do better if they choose a more natural mean to support their healing process. If they're dealing with cardiovascular issues, high blood pressure or cholesterol, for instance, instead of going on pharmaceutical medication, why not try diet change? Why not try herbs like hawthorn, taking CoQ10, niacin, good essential fatty acids? Why not try these things first and see what kind of impact that it has, rather than immediately jumping to a pharmaceutical drug that will then have a negative effect on the body?
Well, I would think that if allopathic doctors were more result-oriented and were basically paid on the results they get, they would be a little bit more attuned to the things that you're doing and do things in a less invasive way, in a less costly manner.
Exactly. And that is the thing, is that they feel, what should I say, the medical profession almost in some way feels untouchable, meaning as long as they follow the medical protocols that are outlined, they feel like they've done what they should do, whether they get results or no results. So I absolutely agree with you. If it was more result-based medicine and that they were getting compensated based upon that, I think things would change.
Well, I would think with the chronic diseases that we have running rampant in our society nowadays, where you have 30, 40, and even 50% of the people in this country with some form of chronic disease, of which obesity is one of the worst, that you would have to come together at some point in time. And I understand that, your treatment of these diseases is a lot different than what the allopathic doctors do. You're more geared toward a patient-doctor relationship where you're working together rather than a dictatorship where this is what you're going to do and this is how you have to do it.
Yeah, and that is looking upon each patient as an individual. The allopathic world, you have, like I mentioned, it's this disease, this cure or this drug. And in the naturopathic world, each person comes in as an individual. They may exhibit the same kind of symptoms. They both may be dealing with rheumatoid arthritis, but it can be caused by two different, completely different sets of causes. So you want to, look at what those causes are. For instance, you're talking about obesity. Well, are we dealing with thyroid? Are we talking about, the dietary concerns? Are we dealing with toxicity that is then impacting the endocrine system? Are we dealing with inflammation? Are we dealing with poor nutritional absorption? So where do we go first? Obviously, you have the traditional look, meaning that the equation, calories in and then calories out.
Well, excuse me, we're going to have to go for a break, speaking of going places. So just hold on with us 1 second. We have to take a quick break now. We'll be back in a few minutes. You're listening to Healthy Conclusions with Bob Neugebauer on 580 KIDO. Welcome back to Healthy Conclusions on 580 KIDO. You're speaking with Dr. Michael Karlsfeldt. And this show is sponsored by altruahealthcare.org. Doctor, let me ask you an important question here. Is natural medicine strong enough to deal with chronic illness? And I'm talking about cancer or autoimmune diseases.
It's amazing the amount of tools that a naturopath has. And when you have a patient that comes in and they're dealing with something like cancer, and obviously if you're dealing with cancer, you need to be under the care of an oncologist. That's legally that's what you need to be. And they have three different ways of treating you. They get the chemo, they have radiation, and they have also surgery. So these are the three tools that they have. And they're trying to develop new forms of chemo, but what's been fascinating over the 60-some years that they've been trying to fight this war on cancer, the outcome hasn't really improved that much. There are certain diseases where chemo is that can be very helpful, but it's still the 5 years
survival rate.
5-year survival rate. It's still just a little bit above 2% on the majority of the cancers.
Well, let me interject here one thing. With chemotherapy, isn't there something new that was brought about through the naturopathy arena on insulin potentiation therapy, where they only use like 10% of the chemo they would normally use, and they use the insulin to get into the cells kind of as a backdoor or a Trojan horse?
Exactly. Yeah, they've seen that the cancer cells, they thrive on sugar. So if you would then use that principle, you can then use the insulin potentiation therapy, where you use a little bit of insulin and you combine it then with chemo at a smaller amount, and that will then drive that chemo into the cancer cells more efficiently. Because that is one of the issues, is the chemo to actually get into the cancer cells. And if you don't kill a certain amount of cancer cells, the likelihood that's going to grow back and also come back with a bigger fury is quite high. So you have this initial success that you get chemotherapy and you find out, I'm cured. The cancer responded very, very well, and then a year later it is back with much more aggressive, and the chemo's not working at that time, and then they die. That's a very common scenario. So using holistic principles along with some of the allopathic tools can sometimes increase the survival and also your ability to fight off cancer quite a bit. So insulin potentiation therapy is one of the techniques. You also have then combining chemo or radiation along with things like vitamin C IVs. You also have mistletoe that's been used quite frequently in Germany and Austria. In fact, that's almost the standard of care, is to use mistletoe therapy while you're going through chemo radiation, just to keep the immune system still active and going, so you can fight off the cancer and you have a higher survival rate with that. You also have other tools like turmeric is coming out. You can do that orally, but they've done a lot of research in how effective it is and IV-wise. And you have artesunate, which is from the plant wormwood, as another tool that you're using IV-wise. And the reason why you do a lot of the IVs is that because it is hard to get the blood saturation and that you need taking it orally, because then you have to rely then on a gut, on the absorption through the gut. And a lot of us that are dealing with chronic diseases, we have a hard time then absorbing the nutrients through the gut, because usually it has gotten dysfunctional at that point. So to use IV therapy at that time is quite fantastic.
So this would be a complementary therapy along with the chemo. And my question is, why don't we see more use of it? I mean, I understand that when you use pure chemo, it does necessarily kill a lot of your good cells in your body and basically breaks down your immune system. But wouldn't it be better? Wouldn't it be better if they actually did use these complementary ways of doing this?
It would be much better. One of the obstacles we have is that stigma or I shouldn't say stigma. It is the thought that since chemotherapy is an oxidative therapy, so now we need to stay away from anything that is antioxidant. So they look upon, vitamin C is an antioxidant. So we need to stay away from anything that in any way can then interfere with the chemo. The problem with that is that they research for every study that's out there that's proving that antioxidant interferes with chemo. There are hundreds that show that antioxidants like selenium, vitamin C, green tea extract, curcumin, all these different substances have then a benefit and increases the outcome of the chemo. So it is the fear sometimes of the oncologist to believe, to bring in any other factor than the factor that he knows, and he's not educated most of the time in other therapies like the vitamin C and artesunate and the ones that I was talking about.
So, how do we get you guys to work together? Does this have to be a government thing where they force you to work together, or do you think at some point in time The allopathic side will come together with you, and you, because of the doctor shortage, by 2025, they expect to be short 90,000 doctors in this country. And I don't see how they're going to fill that and fix that unless they do work with you and other alternative medicine doctors to actually provide an integrative solution.
Exactly. And I think it is, the key is to look into other types of practitioners that work in the health field to help to fill that gap. And I believe change comes from public pressure. They are the ones that spend the money, and whoever spends the money is the one that ultimately has the control. So I think it comes through education, and that's why tools like your show that you have, and also I have my own TV show that runs here locally called True Health with Dr. Karlfeldt. So I think these educational tools, educating the public as to the power of natural medicine and that it is a viable solution when you're dealing with chronic diseases, and that it has the power to change the outcome. It's not just nice to take a little pill and hopefully you'll feel better. It does have the ability to change physiological functions so that the body can then shift towards health instead of dealing with things like MS or lupus or cancer. Because the key, the main view that a naturopathic doctor has is that it looks upon the soil of the patient and corrects the soil. And it looks upon disease as the weeds that grow out of that soil. But if you change the soil, remove chemicals, you remove interferences, you remove heavy metals or chronic infections, or if you're dealing with food sensitivities, you pinpoint which ones they are, and then you add the nutrients that the soil needs in order to be able to be healthy. And out of that healthy soil, then health grows. Healthy plants grows.
For the audience's benefit, soil, you're talking about the body as a whole and its chemical makeup. Am I correct?
Exactly. So you look upon the body just like you would look upon the soil in the garden. And it is how you treat that, then you get the type of plants that you're wanting. So you can't really, you can kill the weeds with weed killers, but over time, that soil is going to be toxic, and you're not going to be able to grow healthy plants in it.
Well, we all know what Roundup does to your soil.
Exactly. Yeah, it's atrocious. We're finding it in everybody and anybody, with what's going on in that area. So so with naturopathic medicine, it's a really powerful option. I have patients coming in, for instance, they deal with lupus, and you look at what is the causative factor, and you see, well, they're heavy metal toxic, and you start, you put them on a program that chelates these heavy metals out of their system. You use things like chlorella, or you have modified citrus pectin, or some clay, or cilantro, or EDTA, and you have all these different options that are available. And at the same time, then wherever the heavy metals, where they're pulled out, you need to supply them the minerals to kind of build that tissue and make it healthy again. And then things like MS or lupus, it goes away.
Okay, I've got to take one option here and opt out for a quick break again. We have to take a quick break. We'll be back in a few minutes. You're listening to Health Conclusions with Bob Neugebauer on 580 KIDO. Welcome back to Health Conclusions on 580 KIDO. We're speaking with Dr. Michael Karlfeldt of the Karlfeldt Center here in Meridian, and it's sponsored by the AltruaHealthShare.org. Doctor, could we spend a little bit of time here in our last few minutes to talk about double-blind studies and the relevance of natural medicine, and then maybe about the impact of the toxic world and nutritionally deficient foods?
Absolutely. People always come and they ask, you give them a certain supplement or you give them a certain treatment plan, and they ask, well, has there been any double-blind studies? What's the research behind this product or this type of treatment? And it is important to understand what double-blind studies, what they truly are, and why they were designed. With the double-blind studies, the way they function is that you have two groups. They do exactly the same thing, and nobody knows who's going to have the treatment or not going to have the treatment. And you only want to change one factor. So you only want to introduce one chemical constituent. And that's why it works very well for pharmaceutical drugs, because you're just introducing then one chemical. When you're looking then in the naturopathic world, you're looking upon the body as a whole. So you cannot just change one factor and produce an outcome. You're changing the whole lifestyle. And when you're also introducing an herb, the herb is a complex, it consists of a complex group of chemicals that are put together in a very specific way. So there's so many factors within the herb that can impact an individual. So it really doesn't, the double-blind studies really do not apply in any shape or form when it comes to studying herbs, like St. John's wort, for instance. Well, you can say that such and such is the active chemical constituent, and that is what we're studying. Well, in fact, there are hundreds of different chemical constituents. So which one is it that is making an impact? So you can't really do the double-blind studies. It becomes more of anecdotal type of impact, where you have a group of people that are treated naturopathically and another group that is not, and then seeing the difference in the outcome. It's more that type of research that we would need to do.
Just a quick question here. Aren't many of the drugs that we're using today, weren't they originally produced from herbs?
Absolutely. Yeah, you have like digitalis, coming from herbs. You have aspirin, it came from the salicylic acid that comes from aspirin that's herbal based. You have, so that's, I think that hundreds and hundreds of pharmaceutical drugs that have kind of an herbal background.
So the pharmaceutical companies, they will do these double-blind tests. But in actuality, they can't patent a lot of these herbs, and that's probably one of the reasons that they go through all of these processes to make it more difficult for people to use these other substances naturally. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, they can't make any money on patenting something that already exists in nature. Even if it may be much more powerful the way that exists in its natural form, they can't make any money on it. They can't have a patent on it. So why would they spend all that money doing research on a natural substance that they can't make any money on?
But isn't that a detriment to the public?
Absolutely. But it again, it's the money. Their job is to make money. They have they're a business. And that's what's very important for people to understand, that pharmaceutical companies, hospitals, all of these places are businesses, and they have a responsibility to their shareholders to make money. So yes, they help a lot of people, but at the same time, at the end of the day, they need to be profitable. So you just need to be aware of that as a patient. So they will then alter. They can take then a pharmaceutical company, even though the natural constituent is much healthier, much more effective. They can't make any money on it, so they need to then alter that in a way so that they can patent it, and then they will research that. And because it is altered, it's not natural to the body, so then it can then become toxic to the body.
So when we're talking about toxicity, Can we talk a little bit about the impact of toxicity and even from drugs, but how different and how we could change things if we were looking at the foods we eat in diet and how they could actually change our lives? And I know nowadays we have a lot of nutritionally deficient foods, but what is the interaction between these two, the toxicity and the natural foods?
So the way food existed, let's say early 19th century, look at a tomato, for instance, the way it was cultivated back in the early 1900s and the way it's cultivated now, the nutritional, the level of nutrients in a tomato now is maybe like, 10% of what it used to be. It is even though we're eating, even if we really try to work hard on eating well, we eat fruits and vegetables and we eat healthy, we're still going to be lacking nutrients. So we're still actually going to need to supply that or supplement that with vitamins and minerals and, through different supplements. And so we have less nutrients in our food. And then also we are exposed to so many more chemicals that we're dealing with right now environmentally. And also what's sprayed on our food and what exists in our water and what's injecting into us, through things like vaccinations. We have spraying up in the air, for all the pesticides and killing of Zika virus and all these things. So we're dealing with all these stressors every day. And then we have less nutrients in our food to be able to handle that. So because of this skewed equation, where we have more toxins, less nutrients, there's no wonder we are dealing with more chronic diseases like autoimmune diseases, cancer, diabetes, all these things. It's just a result of the skewed equation that we've created over time.
Well, if you simply look back into the 1940s where 1 in 40 people would get cancer, and then in the 1940s and 60s, it went down substantially to 20 and then 16 people that get cancer. Now we're looking at almost a 1-to-1 ratio. So there has to be something that's going on with the toxicity that's causing this.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's scary when you look at the statistics on cancer. You get it's 1 out of 2. So if you have a group of people with 50 people in it, 25 of them are going to get cancer. So you need to look at how am I living? What is my lifestyle? Am I dealing with toxic thoughts? Am I dealing with, what am I cleaning my house with? Am I bringing in toxins in my environment, in my children's environment? What am I eating? Am I maximizing the amount of nutrients in my life? Am I eating greens? Am I eating reds? Am I eating live food so that I can increase my chance of surviving and surviving well? It's not just about surviving. I mean, with medication, we manage symptoms and people live longer, but they don't live longer well with energy, with vitality, pain-free, being productive.
Doc, thank you very much for joining us this evening and for your enlightenment on naturopathic medicine. This is Bob Neugebauer signing off for Healthy Conclusions, and we hope that you will join us again at the same time next Sunday for another hour of informative talk about nutrition, exercise, and alternative medicine. This is sponsored by AltruaHealthShare.org on 580 KIDO. Until next week, have a good one.